Now, our opening panel will be discussing hot trends in digital business and technology. The past year has been a reality check for startup unicorns, as you saw in the video, with a number of markdowns and down rounds, a slowdown in the IPO market, and talk of a bursting tech bubble. Though the competition is now heating up for other things like artificial intelligence, bot stores, self-driving cars, VR technology, streaming, and social videos. With so much activity in the consumer internet space, this panel gathers leading investors to share their insights on what's hype and what's here to stay, and the trends they expect to see in the near future. So let's welcome to the stage the moderator, Mr. Papadimitriou, innovation scout and founder of Intelligencr, and his panel members. Please come on stage.
Yeah, it's always difficult to be the first opening panel, right? Papadimitriou, that's a second Greek name you hear after, of course, Almaz also has kind of Greek connotation here. I traveled the world. I was not born in Greece. Actually, I was born in Switzerland, so I'm not bankrupt. My mother was from Finland, so I'm already in my DNA. I have a lot of countries. I have 3 passports. They hold it in a safe. My real name is Jason Bourne. Good. You're laughing, so it means you're already awake. So what we're going to do, you saw the video just now. I'm lucky enough to be traveling the world scouting for innovation. That's my job. I'm an innovation scout. I work with a lot of large corporations, and I help them figure out innovation. To put it simply, I work in China, I work in Brazil, I work in Southeast Asia, where I used to live. I used to live in Manila. I used to live in Tokyo as well, in Japan. Now I live in London, another very cosmopolitan place. I work as well in the region here, in the MENA region as well. And I've tried to have this kind of global overview, but of course, I'm just one guy. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. So what I want to do is talk about the few of the trends we've seen. You know, the first thing is everybody talks about Games of Thrones because, of course, winter is coming. Supposedly winter is coming. Trust me, when I landed this morning at 4:30 here at DXB, and it was already 33 degrees coming. I was in Montenegro yesterday. Well, trust me, for me, winter is not coming. So is that a reality or not? Are there all the markdowns we're talking about? Is it really just a period? You know, I had a startup in the end of the 90s. We went through the downturn that at the early 2000s. I'm still here. I'm still standing. So does it really matter? These are the kind of questions that we're going to, of course, answer or try to answer with 3 eminent panelists. I'm going to invite them on stage. I'm going to go on a first-name basis because I don't like to be too formal. Sorry, guys. I'm going to first with a lady. I'm very happy. Tugce, can you come on stage? Then Alessandro, and please applaud them so they can also come on. Yes, and Sasha, please. You can join me on stage. We're going to also obviously talk a little bit about the technologies because, of course, technology is so sexy. So we're going to see if you want to Snapchat us while we do that, or if you want to replace us by bots within the next 10 minutes because we're so boring, we'll see about that as well. So we're going to be sitting, so I hope that the fact that we are sitting will not make it too... we're not going to start falling asleep, especially me. I exactly slept 2 hours before coming on stage, so bear with me. I'll try to be as energizing as I can. And what I'm going to ask, whilst I'm sitting, and I'm start with you, Tugce, I'm going to ask all of them to basically introduce themselves in their own words. What do they do so you can learn about them? Tugce?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you in Dubai. So I'm one of the co-founders of Angel Labs, and we are the world's first investor accelerator, and we focus on creating more angel investors and venture capitalists around the world. We have a presence in 41 countries, and what we do is we work with high net worth individuals, family offices, and anyone who's interested in investing in technology, and provide them with the necessary education, resources, and tools to become great investors in their communities and also get them involved with global investment opportunities.
Who wants it, Sasha?
Yeah, this way. Sure.
Okay. You don't have to be too close. If you shout loud enough, it works.
I represent a company which I created, Almaz Capital, which actually focused to help to innovative entrepreneurs to create global opportunity, to find way to the global market. And we invest money to guys who would like to build something. Since today, all innovation coming not only from Silicon Valley, but coming from many, many other places, including from this place, I hope.
I'm going to put it closer to you because I'm hearing people.
Okay, so it is better. I don't need to repeat, I think. What is it? So.
Yeah, Alessandro, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alessandro Piol. Let's see, I've been in venture capital for about 20 plus years. I've invested mostly in technology across the board, all areas of technology, but more recently I started a fund called AlphaPrime that's focused on what I think is one of the big trends in the future. We'll talk about it, but in the area of safety and security, which is something that's really important and pervasive across multiple industries.
So I could understand that you were saying that you were acting globally. Can you tell us, you are actively investing and or helping investment in all countries, or do you have still areas of focus, particular focus, you guys? Just so that I understand if you're truly global, because we have different perspectives depending on where we are, where we live, the startups we're seeing, the movements we're seeing. So where are you based and where are you most active?
So we are based in San Francisco, but we have a presence in 41 countries right now, and it includes places like all the way from Mozambique to Germany to Japan, Korea. We're truly very global in every sense of the way.
Yeah. As far as we have office in Silicon Valley, Moscow, and Berlin. But we are scouting a lot, so I don't know where I live actually, so I skip my time between Silicon Valley, Europe, basically Amsterdam, Moscow, and I'm resident of Monaco, so I don't know where.
We are based in New York, so we have our main focus is in the US from the standpoint of building companies, but from the standpoint of finding technologies, we look all over the world.
New York, the city's so good they named it twice. New York, New York. So I'll start with you. You said that you mentioned that you were about to say what is the most important piece of technology that actually appeals to you, Alessandro. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and whether the others agree or not with it?
Yeah, let me just say a couple of things about what we see in terms of trends. I think what we've seen over the past few years and what we're seeing developing now is, I think, two main areas. One is the area of how to use large amounts of data to do things, right? So that what follows from that is applications in machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data applications, and so on. The other important trend that we're seeing is that started 10 years ago with the smartphone is really the application of wireless across the board that's sort of merging software technologies with the physical world, right? So we're seeing with the smartphone, we are seeing it with Internet of Things, but it really includes a variety of areas of interest, which are, the drones, self-driving vehicles, could have applications having to do with the, Alexa type of applications, so voice-driven devices in your home, applications have to do with virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on. So there is this merger of the physical with the virtual, right? And the reason why we're investing in safety and security is that underneath it all, the security of these devices, whenever you add devices to a network, you're creating security holes. And this issue of protecting people and assets is going to be, it's already big, and it's going to get even bigger. That's why we think, from our perspective, that the safety security angle that goes across industries is an important one for years to come.
Before I go on to Sasha, you talked about security. It's an anecdote, but you remember where Target was hit, but then they stole their massive amount of credit cards in the US. The reason they were able to access the devices were because in a warehouse, the air conditioning system was set to password 00000, and through the air conditioning system unit, they were able to go back to the main servers and steal all the passwords to tell you. So I totally agree with that. But we'll go to security maybe later. Sasha, do you agree with that? I mean, obviously everybody talks about this merging of digital and physical. Obviously, Omar in his introduction says we are reaching the tipping point, or maybe we have actually passed it. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's already there, or do we think we're overstating these technologies?
No, we live in on the age when it is new waves each time come, a new wave of revolution, and of course security becoming behind. Since it is not first needs which we pay attention, so we try to bring some disruptive technology to our industries and our life and everything. So, and of course breaches exist everywhere. So it is some kind of game of white and black hats which go on always. What will be before, but of course, we need to understand we live completely new life, which actually no boundaries exist between physical and digital world. Okay, I'm sorry. I will take them.
Don't worry, that's fine. It will still work.
So, I can repeat if you need. So, I will make short. The short is very simple. So we now, the revolution which is going, there's many of them, we can make many waves of revolution which is going. And we try to find a new way to protect us. So since always revolution in technology going ahead of security, privacy, and other topics. So since physical world and digital world now combine very intensively, so we have ability to see that breaches going everywhere. So in our life, usual life, we are not protected to see us. In our phones, which you connect to here to internet or to Wi-Fi, actually they also can be damageable. I was on one hacker conference where I need to throw all my phones and my laptops since they all was hacks. And from this perspective, you cannot use them anymore. From perspective, it is going in future, we need to understand that we will have too many wearables and something will be inside us in a few years. Yeah? So in 5-10 years, we will have stuff not only in our clothes, but inside us. From this perspective, of course, 000 or any other protection doesn't work. But as you see, a new wave of technology coming, for example, a blockchain, people see this only for financial world, but actually it is a way to build trust between two ends, between one end and second end. We can speak a lot about it, but idea it is answer. It is very difficult world right now.
There are two mentions about
I want to
security.
make a quick comment before we get going, because this panel is about like the global trends that we see around the world. But before we have a deep dive there, I just want to say one thing. I think it's very important that, so all these global trends are dictated by the main hubs like Silicon Valley, New York, Berlin, and London, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's irrelevant in a local context. And that's something, almost like a mistake we see in a lot of ecosystems around the world. People stop investing in what they're really good at, and they start following these global trends because virtual reality is hot, and all of a sudden you see all these different countries and ecosystem invest in that, which makes sense and is also smart. Of course, we need to follow these global trends and make sure that we are up to our game. But I think, let's say in a place like Sri Lanka, for example, their #1 economy is textiles, and it is very smart for them to invest in the intersection of innovative technology and their domain expertise, and that's how you can make a name for yourself in the global tech space. So I think there should be a good balance between investing in getting better around these global trends, but also making sure that you don't forget about what you're really good at and building technology around that.
I agree. I'm going to ask you a question about investing, because it's one thing to say, this is a technology I like, but since you guys are investing, then I'm going to ask you, what is actually where you put your money in? Because it might not be the same answer, but to come to your point, to say you're right, because I also see various ecosystems in the world, and there's this willingness, more often than not, especially by public bodies, governments, to say, we're going to build the next Silicon Valley. We've been hearing that for like the past 10 years, blah, blah, blah. The reality is, for instance, where, again, Omar, when in his introduction, talked about neural networks for machine learning and stuff like that, you need to have the required talent, the required research. For instance, this is why, for instance, Beijing is a very strong hot point for that, whereas maybe, I don't know, Geneva, where I was born, might not be because you don't have the right talent. So it's not enough, by definition, it's not only of your existing forces, but also because you have the existing talent that already exists, thus you won't not copy whichever market. There's, for instance, to talk about Switzerland, Zurich does the university there does research on drones, for instance. So you have now a hotspot talking about drones. So we'll go there, but where do you put your actual money, Alessandro? Because you said, okay, you're interested, you talked about security, you talked about the fact that, of course, all these devices talk to each other. Some studies show that there will be between 40 and 100 billion devices actually scattered around, listening passive devices, low emission devices that will talk to each other, talk back to us, to our phones, etc. You mentioned security, I do agree, but is that something you then put your money in, invest in, or is it what do you actually invest in today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a variety of areas we look at. I can mention a couple of things we've actually done, but when you talk about safety and security, it's more than just cybersecurity, right? So it's more than just avoiding the target problem where they got into the outsourcer of air conditioning and they got into the systems. It's more than just protecting the network. It's also may have to do with physical security itself, right? For instance, the problem of drones flying around that sometimes are not uncontrollable. How do you protect yourself against that? It may have to do with the financial transactions. So how do you secure your transaction? How do you authenticate users? How do you authenticate people who are applying for credit cards or opening bank accounts? May have to do with the whole decision-making process behind how to protect people and assets, right? So we're looking at all those areas. I mean, to give a couple of specific examples, one company that we're an investor in is a company in New York called Secure, which is does exactly what I just mentioned before, which is authenticating end users that who are trying to do transactions, money transfer, or opening credit cards account, opening bank accounts, by using their social data. So they're going beyond the credit bureau information and getting the social profile of the person in order to understand whether that person is really who they say they are. And by doing that, eliminating about 50% of fraud, right? That's one example. Another example of a company, more, I guess, Internet of Thing type is a company called Canary that does a home device that sort of alerts you if something goes on in the home, has a number of sensors and cameras. They allow you to do that, right? And they alert you if you're not home, what's going on, or if you're not in the office, what's going on. Other companies we're looking at are companies that are doing, still in the authentication space, they're tracking how you use your devices to build a digital signature of your use, so that they can continuously track you. When somebody takes over your phone or your computer, they can tell that something's wrong is going on, and they can alert the right people, right? So there's a number of things around there. I mean, we looked at, I can tell you there are companies that are working in around, the motor vehicle space. They're trying to protect now cars, which are now part of the Internet of Things, from getting hacked and bad things happening. There are companies that are working in the drone space that are trying to figure out how to stop a drone from going to protected spaces, right? And there is 2 or 3 different approaches to that. Sometimes they can actually take control of the drones and put it down. Sometimes they can build maps so that hopefully by law one day the drones will have to load those maps and would not be able to enter protected spaces. So there is a variety of things that are going on that I mean, there is hundreds of opportunities we're looking at that we could invest in, but it's really an open field. There's so much going on that and so much to be protected as you said before, with more and more devices out there, there's more and more to protect.
Yeah, by the way, there's also another way. I work with airlines, so I know about drones. The last way is in Kentucky, you can apparently just shoot it down with a gun. That's maybe also a good start.
You can do that too, yes.
Sasha, go ahead.
I would like to say that, of course, each company doing differently, but we need to take the basic of venture capitalists. So if you, in Series A or B, you making and you run a fund, so like we are, like 200, 300 million, so you're actually doing only 15 investment. So it is not too many. It's low frequency business. So from this perspective, you invest like 2-3 companies per year. You select from 1,000 companies. So, and it is not too many. If you are speaking about hot area to invest, you also need to divide and slice company. So you slice company for internet enabling companies like services, and it can be developed local pretty nicely since you have many businesses which can be disrupted by internet usage. So, and you can have hot company, or I don't know, to make efficiency laundry, for example, or hot company to connect and feed your pets. So it will be, all will be disruptive, yes? So it is like tiny, tiny disruption. So, but you have basic technology which is going through wave, and of course basic technology, until we will move to quantum computing, we will use a silicon. So it is not too much improvement, it is just improvement which can be done by Intel and others. So, but we came for wave, which we name virtual stuff, or cloud computing, which will bring for us many stuff. We invested a lot in this area. So after this common wave, so named big data buzzwords, yeah? So we started to collect data, and we started to see basic technology and technology which application technology. So basic technology, it is like in-memory computing, and it is very popular direction. It is many of them going on this way. So, and when you use for application, you started to use, you need to have to work with data. It become a new wave, deep learning. So if now I'm looking for new my fund, and we usually invest in the early stages of fund, we invest very risky stuff, since it will require develop companies 3, 5, 10 years sometimes. From this perspective, you invest in deep learning and blockchain. It is two technologies which change new wave of technology after cloud computing, if you're speaking about deep. If you're speaking about local environments, you can see many stuff. You are going and see construction buildings. So now it is how to disrupt the construction industry, how to disrupt actually real estate industry, which is Dubai, for example, rich about. So it is where you started to see how you can improve rent, how you improve many stuff to make usage of all these square meters which Dubai has. So it is becoming local business in general. You can copycat this business from other places, but it will be created by a local entrepreneur, and there's no reason to go somewhere. So it is how we need to look on investment, yes?
I have 3 cats, so I'm very much looking forward to investment in pet feeding technology, remote. Tugce, do you want to chime in on maybe what you are looking at? You mentioned, of course, that there are strengths according to markets, ecosystems, but are there any specific ones that you've seen maybe some of the people you work with actually being very keen to work on?
So with our investors, so again, like we have around 6,000 investors in 41 countries. And when we look at what they're investing in, usually they prefer diversifying their portfolio. Most of these people, they would allocate 50% of their investment strategy in bigger markets like Silicon Valley or New York, and the remaining of their investment portfolio would go into local deal flow. But when we look at what they always ask us to invest in, it's of course like again virtual reality, digital health, IoT still is very, very hot for our global investors. So yeah, and on the local level, again, it's very different from a place like Turkey to what's hot in New Zealand. So.
Anything that excites you in particular?
For me, I would definitely say virtual reality for sure, because I work very closely with LA and with a lot of, so I also have an advisor hat, and I work with entertainment studios in LA, and just seeing how virtual reality is being implemented into entertainment technologies and how it's going to change the way we watch movies in the future at our homes. Or it's a pretty big business, so personally, I'm very passionate about that.
I'm going to go there for a little bit. So it's always about a question of timing, right? Because, for instance, I had started the startup I mentioned earlier in the 90s. We're doing something fantastic, which was mobile content delivery. The problem, there was no one actually using their mobile to go online. So basically, we're doing that stupidly. I'm not a pioneer for doing that. So
same with
VR
reality,
sometimes feels like in blockchain, these two I'm going to go there, feel like
it's
a bit.
Too early, yeah.
Is it too early? You know, we have a tendency to kind of overstate these technologies when they come at very early stage, like so excited. We have then the tendency of understating what they will actually achieve in the next 10 to 20 years. So since you mentioned VR, and I know that Alessandro, you also mentioned VR in your opening statement. Do you think that virtual reality, and we can actually put it together with augmented reality, do you think it's something that you would invest in? It's something that is worth looking at, or is it something that is still in a very exploratory phase? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you are full VR, you still need like a 2,000 piece of equipment to stay next to you, and I'm not sure the market is ready to have that where everybody just has a smartphone. Anyone wants to chime in on VR? Because I'm sure that
I'll just say one word on that before you answer that. I think, again, as you said, it's very exploratory level right now. We have no clue what that's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years, but it was the same thing with Twitter when it first came out. I remember the first tweets people were sharing, and it had nothing to do with the Twitter it is today and how it changed the way we receive news and share news. So I think with VR, yes, we are onto something, but it's so different from what it's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years.
Sasha, as you wish, whoever.
Sorry?
Whoever comes first.
Virtual reality, this topic. Okay, so it is not first wave of virtual reality. Who remember Second Life? Few people? So I participated in first meeting which IBM organized, and you didn't have ability to pick up the name, real name. You needed to pick up some name. I pick up Italian name. So, but since IBM managed by Italian people, yes, so that's why I decided I will be Italian. So, and you learn how to fly, and some people started to live in the Second Life. So it is wave of entertainment which is going. Yes, a practical application in virtual reality is too far. And of course, if you would like to get real virtual reality, you need to add smell, you need to add many stuff. So it is too far still to generate. So you need to go to add more combined physical world and digital world, since you need to create some other stuff in addition to digital and sound. So from this perspective, I think in next 5 years it will be mostly gaming and some limited application. So, and it is very competitive world, so what I can say. So since the background technologies which just need to be happened before, they're still on the way.
I think virtual reality today, I think, is mostly confined to entertainment applications and gaming applications. I think those are coming fast. I mean, we're seeing them happening with the Oculus and other type of devices. It's easy to imagine, travel applications, these type of things. But I think what's coming before virtual, eventually there's going to be a lot of application around virtual reality. But I think what's coming also right now is augmented reality, which is sort of the merger of real life and augmented by whatever overlay you want to lay on top of that. I mean, we're seeing that. I mean, it's already there. It hasn't been called that. I mean, but the application you see in the cockpit or in other places where you have heads-up displays and so on are basically virtual augmented reality applications, and I think we'll see a lot of that coming up in the next few years.
Go ahead.
I think I was just going to go back to your previous question when you asked me what other trends we see. So we do a lot of work with individuals and family offices wanting to become angel investors or maybe potential LPs in funds, but we also work with corporations. So there are a lot of corporations that come to us. They're hoping to build their corporate VC arm, and they work with us to build their own investment thesis and figure out how you can actually act as an investor as a big corporation where things are relatively slow to make decisions around, etc. And I would say 80% of the corporations that come to us are financial institutions, and it's around Fintech. So that's also one area that's very hot for.
Thank you, because that's where I actually wanted to go. So thank you so much. But it's certainly true when you look at the level of the R&D investments, so traditional R&D, we're not talking about corporate ventures, is so high that, and these companies are sometimes either scared or need to understand what's going on, to put it very candidly. Thus, I've seen also a big uptick of corporates trying to figure out how to innovate within them, but also how to help others to create ecosystems around themselves. We've seen that, I live in the UK, so we talk about Fintech. We've seen companies like retail banking, like Barclays, et cetera, that we've associated with Techstars, because they are trying to figure that out. So let's talk, before we go, maybe Fintech in general, that one word that everybody's been churning for the past 2 years, which is blockchain, 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 blockchain. I mean, first of all, I don't think half of the people know exactly what it actually means, but without even defining it, do you think, because it's a term you mentioned, is it something that is, we know it's hot because we know that Goldman Sachs and others are actually investing in it, but do you think it's beyond the Fintech, you said that, is it something that will actually be happening, will help us create that ledger of anonymous and secure and safe, maybe also to avoid having the NSA overhearing what we're saying? Is it something that will actually get there, or do you think it will have limited, again, this question of timing, is it something that will happen actually in the next 50 years, the next 5 years?
Me?
Well, yeah, go ahead, take it home.
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's a very interesting technology that works, and if deployed, will make things cheaper, safer, secure, has all the right advantages. I think the main problem with the blockchain can have applications in multiple areas. It's not only financial transactions. Well, it's anything where you move assets or assets change hands, right? So, and the fact that you have a distributed ledger makes it more secure and harder to hack, right? So, I think it's a great technology, and we'll see some deployment of it. The problem is that you're dealing with big forces against it. So the incumbents are, financial services companies, and they don't want to see something like that sort of escape from their hands, right? So that's why they formed a consortium called R3, which has all the banks involved, to be able to develop this type of technologies in a closed circuit, which doesn't make any sense if you take the spirit of the technology the way it was invented. It doesn't, should not be the way that it's done. But so there is a big fight for control here, and in each one of the applications you look at, there are strong incumbents, and so the challenge is going to be how do you make this available. I think it's going to take some time before you get there, right? So how do you make this available without stepping on too many feet and making everybody participate? That's going to be the big challenge.
I will say that, first of all, you need to divide cryptocurrency and blockchain. Yeah, so cryptocurrency, and it is why people immediately, when people speaking about blockchains, they're speaking about financial industry. Yeah, in reality, it is not, as was mentioned, since it is. Imagine what, each time when you look on technology, you need to see what disruption is bringing this technology. It is bringing elimination of some services, of some work, of some specialty. Even notary will be not needed if you look through blockchain technology availability. So possibly first will come smart contracts, possibly first will be many other stuff. It is why I told we created special group, and we are looking for 10 platforms right now and looking how they actually what we see many applications. So if you take Ethereum, which was wrote by Vitalik Buterin, the guy who moved from Canada to Switzerland right now, it is 200 application, which is written in 1 year. 200 application, which is easy to create. I have associate who wrote document trust application in 3 days. So, which means it is disruption of technology. When you're speaking about deep technological guy, you will say it was cloud computing, big data, blockchain. So it is only 3. IoT, it is a like passage of something, yes. So, but it is what you need to see. Chinese government organized already $150 million incubator for blockchain technology. British government organized. So you need to see what is going in the world. So from this perspective, I very believe in this.
Tugce, do you think that the people you work with are so excited about, I'm going to reduce now blockchain to Fintech, are they excited about Fintech because it's the closest to be disrupted market? Do you think is that why, or is that because by definition?
Well, banking is one of the oldest industries in the world, and when you look at its evolution, it's probably one of the few industries that have made almost, or I'm not going to say no progress, but the progress in the banking industry is so slow. So there's definitely a lot of room for innovation and disrupting the current way we do banking right now. It's so old school in so many ways.
More important is bringing not centralization, but why government in some places stops this, since it is eliminate many functions inside government if you use technology. So you will eliminate, like possibly, I don't know, more than 50% of bureaucrats which is sitting between.
That's good news, no?
Yeah, it is good news. It is why it is not about financial industry. Come on, guys. It is a change in completely how we operate with our day-to-day life and communication between us, between government, between corporation to corporation. Right. And so it is where sitting the blockchain disruption, not in financial industry only. Financial industry it is different topic, of course, since it is, will be possibly only central banks in the future. I don't know. We'll see how it will be developed.
But coming back to let's merge this, since you expanded again to blockchain, let's merge that with what you, Alessandro, talked at the beginning about security. Will blockchain enable basically will it enable stuff that was revealed by Panama Files and that we will not see ever again, meaning that if suddenly everything is completely secure, completely anonymous, completely this ledger, the blockchain, then moving your money around the world is very easy. The government cannot see it, and thus there's never revelations as the Panama Files happening ever again. You don't have to answer if you don't want to answer that one, because I know it's a loaded question on purpose. So do you think governments are also one of these big forces that is resisting the implementation of some of these technologies because they want to retain some control, basically? Not only the jobs, but the control.
I mean, theoretically, the thing works, right? So, yes, it would be better, cheaper, safer, and so on. But the problem is, I've seen so many businesses fail because they couldn't beat the incumbents. They were trying to disintermediate a big market, and they just couldn't figure out a way to beat the incumbent, right? I mean, there is so many examples. They are smaller than this one, where it was not possible to disrupt the industry over the years, and this one is a big one in financial services. There is a lot of money there, and the big players don't want to let it go, right? So eventually, it may happen, but I think in the next few years, I think it's a risky business. I think you run the risk of investing in this space, and companies will have to survive a lot longer than you think in order to get there. I think it's going to take longer than you think to get there, and that's the risk, because eventually companies run out of cash, and so that's my word of caution in that. I mean, we're looking at it, but we haven't really made any investments yet. I mean, we're focused more on the trying to make transactions of that type more secure. That's a great technology for it, but you have to pick a place where you can defeat the incumbents.
You know, I will say that it just reminded me about trust or not trust. I was actually creator of one of the first company which built virtual private network in beginning of 90s. Yes, so and this time everybody told it is impossible to connect internet, bank to internet, or corporation to internet. And now we all forgot about this, that it X25 protocol, secure protocol, something else, some dedicated line between offices. So we now operate in internet. So it is just will require a few years. It is any emergent technology growing pretty fast. You just don't, you just need to think how our life changed during the last decade.
And coming back to your question about security, I mean, I think you can say that about not just fintech, but any area. You remember how the government in the US was trying to get help from Apple. Not only they rejected that in a very public way, but in the next couple of weeks, WhatsApp just encrypted everything. So Silicon Valley, or the technology world, is very much against collaborating with local governments in general, even if that means it's kind of good for our security. So it's like a tough, I think it's a tricky area.
It is. I mean, I could go on with that debate for long, but I know that we have probably 7 minutes. And there's two things I want to mention, two topics. One that was not mentioned here, but it also has been one of the biggest talk. Everybody talks about AI, artificial intelligence, not only because it will apparently eat our jobs, but also simply because it will help enable some of these technologies to make better decisions, to help us making better decisions, supposedly to have less email per day, because that's the biggest nightmare we have on a daily basis. That was a joke. But so can you quickly, because sadly we only have 5-6 minutes, AI, is it something you invest in? Is it something you look at? I mean, it's a very broad term, right? Because, you know, there are general AI, narrow AI, and we don't have the time to go into like the details, but is it something that you think is going somewhere again? Are we overstating its value now? Is it something that will, again, the timing will be next 20 years, or is it something that's happening right now? Sasha, I know you want to, I can see you boiling.
I already invested, so it is, I believe it is a real reality. So, and of course it is, people speak AI, deep learning, and this together. So from this perspective, if you collected data, you need to do something.
I remember going to a conference where AI was a main subject. There were a lot of talk about AI. There was 1986. So AI has been going on for the past 30 years, and yes, it's happening. You know, it's been happening, and I mean, it depends on how you define it. What does that mean? I mean, AI is, you know, sort of a very generic term. We're seeing applications of machine learning or deep learning or other things which are sort of, you know, precursors to full AI, and I think it's it's happening, slowly happening. You know, it's now that we can process more data, I think that makes it easier, right?
No, everything going through spiral, yes. So it is everything repeatable. So, but in more developed levels. So by this way, everything what we are speaking about, virtual reality, AI, or anything, it's everything was in the past. So since new technology, it is, as I told, we live on silicon. If we'll started to live on quantum computing, it is where we'll expect something different. When we'll have biochips sitting in our body, we'll have something different. But right now, it is everything going through spiral.
I will finish with one. We'll try to reconvene everything we said. Tugce, you mentioned the strength of the local markets, what they should do, and you were talking about big data. We didn't touch about the topic about big data, but many people think that the fact that companies like, of course, the big ones that we know, we're talking about the consumer-facing one like Google, Facebook, etc., since they have this trove of data about the users, that they have this competitive advantage that is uncatchable, that at some point, whoever comes in the market will never catch with them because they've had this trove of data and more and more and more data. At the same time, because of the speed of technology and the speed of scale that you can apply to any startup, there are people that believe, and I'm one of those, that probably we won't have these type of mega global companies anymore, because as soon as an idea is created somewhere, you can replicate and scale it somewhere else, creating competition. Maybe the last ones were, maybe Uber was the last one. I know it's not exactly what we're talking about today. So here the question is, do you think that we will see other global companies, or do you think that these global companies, the ones that have the data, have an uncatchable competitive advantage? Maybe is there a hope for someone here in this audience to basically create something that will disrupt one of these big companies, or disrupt, or be able, for example, to create the Facebook of banks? There will be one, or do you think there will be like many?
Answer is very simple. So as I told already, it exists basic technologies which some global companies will lead. And since they have resources, and it will happen for a long time. And the usage of technology, integration of technology in services, it will be always local. So always think global and drink local, as people told. Yes.
I think history will repeat itself. I think you'll see great companies are developed locally, and great global companies. I think whenever you have situations where you have poles of technology, I think eventually you see some level of consolidation. So I think I would expect to see more Amazons and Googles, and it will be different topics, different subjects, different flavors, different philosophy, structures, and so on. But you see the equivalent of what's been going on from IBM to Microsoft to Google to all these companies.
Tugce, I will give you the closing words.
For me, it's a simple yes. I also know a lot of investors that have invested in companies that I think are going to be the next Ubers around the world. So I think there's no shortage of global companies coming up in the future.
And on that, thank you so much. Please applaud the three panelists. Thank you, and have a good morning. Thank you, guys.